I guess someone is not muted, at least. That's now a good test. Perfect. Perfect. I would have two questions for you. And please use the chat, the Zoom chat to answer. The first one, where are you tuning in? From where? Country and the region would be also awesome, as we work in Interreg, and it's about European regions also. I need to close, otherwise I cannot see the chat. Oh, this technique. Vienna, Austria. Baden-Württemberg, also part of the project region of the Central European Program. South Bohemia, our friend from Czech Republic. Yes, great. There is Sigrid, which I don't know about, also from Austria. Modena, Bratislava, great. Also Vienna, from Vienna. Yeah, it's good. It's going very fast, I have to say. South Bohemia, that was Germany in between. Slovakia, great. Again, Austria, so that I'm also happy to have a lot of Austrian regions here. Bolzano, Bozen in Italy, and from Hungary, great. From Balaton, so not so far from Benjamin, our speaker. No, it's still some place to go. Yeah. Great. That's quite interesting already, and I'm happy that that Europe and also our region is represented. I would just read out loud the second question. What is your relation to rural borders? I know it's a very broad question, but could be professionally, just I work there, could be personal. So I was raised and the first 5 years of my life, I was living next to the German border, and there was no social innovation, I can swear, even though I was very young. It takes some time to write, but cryptical, bullet pointish. Okay, part of Social Marie. I guess now it's gone, but that's interesting. I will go through the chat, and I'll share the chat content with you later, because we will work later also with it probably. So all these projects, it's not nonsensical and not only for warm up, but I'm also happy to look afterwards into the project and into whatever you write here. That's good. Our partner, Barbara von ZSI, rather a theoretical one, which is great because it's a research institute, so that completely fits. Vienna and Bratislava, it's also, yeah, and there's some, it's also rural in between, I believe. Okay, Miriam, it's interesting. From the German-Swiss border, and now living in the German-French border. It's a very bordery region and very rural. I studied in Freiburg, so I know the region. Okay, really interesting. If you have further comments, please, and you didn't finish your sentence, just go ahead. As I said, I'm happy to look into your messages and answers later. Just as this webinar is part of the Interreg CERSUI project, let me briefly introduce. In a nutshell, this partnership builds on 9 partners from 7 countries. I hope I don't forget anyone: Poland, Germany, Czech Republic, Slovenia, and Slovakia, Austria, and Italy. And very much in a nutshell, we try to do both. We try to create methodologies for social innovation development, but also reaching out to rural communities and ecosystem in all our partner regions. And in the pictures you see, even though it's German, but I hope it's self-explanatory, the user perspective of our project. There's more, but to keep it short, we just talk about the essential outputs or touch points with our target group. And you see also our blended learning approach. So how to say, digital and on-site training and consultings which we do. So on the left, you see our caravan approach, which is a mobile consulting vehicle. And we go with these vehicles. Every partner looks different, so it doesn't need to be a caravan. It's just a metaphor in a way. But with these kind of vehicles and mobile consulting hubs, we go to the communities and harvest ideas. In the center, you see our Rural Social Innovation Academy, aka online course, which allows us to train and to inform and train our participants remotely and on demand. And thirdly, on the right-hand side, you see our RSI lab module, which is kind of mini incubator. Goes over several weeks, all regions implemented in a different manner, adapted. There are some standards, but that's basically our incubation program for local rural innovators. Why we are here? With our webinar series, the borders of social or rural social innovation, we aim to address underserved, so not so dominant topics and issues in the rural social innovation discourse. So today we speak about social innovations in border regions. In June, our awesome partner from Italy will talk about or will take a closer look at the topic of public-private partnerships for the development of rural social innovation. And in September, ZSI, our partner from Austria, will take over and will focus on the urban-rural divide and delve deeper into possibilities how to overcome this. Yes, with regards to the agenda, I'm really happy to have two speakers here today, and Janja. She was not able to come, the third speaker, but we made a video. I hope that she still can, like this, convey her message. Yes, we start with Hans Wevers of the Open University in the Netherlands. He will start with a more analytic perspective on border regions in the European Union, also will remind us a bit about the potentials of social entrepreneurship in this regard. So it's a perfect fit, and he is really researching on this topic. Secondly, Benjamin Moore of the GIZ team lead for the ZETRA project and based in Skopje, will present his efforts in Southeastern Europe to enhance transborder cooperation. And which seems probably a bit odd, but I don't think so at all, because it's a great learning field and a change perspective. So I guess also what Benjamin will say, we can learn a lot as the dynamics in borders there are similar dynamics, and even though it's different everywhere. Let's keep it like this. Thirdly, Janja Viha will give us insights into her project along the Apple Fruit Road Swecina. I hope I pronounced that almost right, in the Austrian-Slovenian border region. As I said, that will be a video, but she also mentioned she's happy for every contact, so I will share her contact later in the chat. With regards to the breakout session, I'll talk later about the details in that regard. And without further ado, I hand over to Hans. Tell me if you're ready.
Yes, thank you, Moritz. I'm ready. So I will share my screen. One moment. So maybe could you confirm that you can hear me and see my presentation?
I can confirm with my
Okay.
eyes and
And your ears. Okay, perfect. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to talk about our paper on this webinar of CERSUI. So I'm very happy to share with you our investigation in social entrepreneurship as a form of cross-border cooperation in EU border regions. First, I will briefly introduce myself. Let me see, how does it? Okay. My name is Hans Wevers. I'm a PhD candidate affiliated at the Open University in the Netherlands. My supervisors are Cosmina Vojna and Frank de Langen. And the first paper of my PhD research project was about the topic of social entrepreneurship as a form of cross-border cooperations in the EU border regions. Next to my PhD candidate work, I have a regular job as a consultant in European projects at Relief BV in the Netherlands, where we are mainly working on Interreg projects. These projects are a bit more concentrated in the northwest of Europe, like the North Sea Region program and the Northwest Europe program, but also cross-border programs and programs more in projects in France, for instance. So both my study work and my professional work are coming quite nice together. Okay, about our paper. The title, Social Entrepreneurship as a Form of Cross-Border Cooperation, Complementarity in EU Border Regions. Okay, where did we start? First of all, the EU border regions, as we know them. About 1/3 of the European citizens, which is about 150 million people, live in EU border regions. EU border regions face social and economic disadvantages and reduced investments, which in turn accelerate movements to more central regions in the country. The European Commission EU cohesion policy budget is about 359 million euros for the framework program 2014-2020. And this is used to reduce regional disparities and to improve cohesion. And finally, Interreg as a program is a key instrument to implement the EU cohesion policy. So what were our observations to start the investigations? Well, we saw that there were similarities between social entrepreneurship and EU cross-border cooperation. For instance, both are mission-driven, both are aimed to create impact, and both are in the same field of play. What we also see is that there is a different approach between social entrepreneurship and EU cross-border cooperation. EU cross-border cooperation is a more top-down organized way of working towards the regions, and of course the regions have their saying in how to spend the budget and what priorities they want to implement. But it's different from the entrepreneurial approach, which is truly bottom-up. Moreover, you see an organizational difference when you look at the size or scale of the organization. The European funding programs are very well and organized from Brussels on to the regional and local levels all over Europe. And for social entrepreneurship, it is less organized, although there are many different initiatives and interest organizations working for social entrepreneurship. We also observed that there is an effort and acknowledgement by the European Commission to improve social entrepreneurship in the European Union. For instance, the Social Business Initiative. There are many communications from the European Commission on social entrepreneurship. And more recently, for instance, they launched the Social Economy Canvas by the Joint Research Center, which is also a very interesting initiative for social enterprises. And finally, we observe that there is a relative low participation of social enterprises and more in general SMEs in cross-border cooperation projects. Good. Just to give you an overview, a little bit of framework of our research. We start with the regional problems, which form to be some kind of opportunities for both concepts, so both for cross-border cooperation, but also for social entrepreneurship. So we see that there are economic opportunities and social opportunities. They come together in the business opportunities, and then both social entrepreneurship and cross-border cooperation could find a starting point to work on their activities. Moreover, there are some characteristics like local embeddedness and social capital, which are shared by both concepts. And there is another characteristic which is more dedicated to social entrepreneurship, and that is the commercial side of the activities. And finally, all these activities should contribute to local and regional economic and social development and decreasing local and regional daily life problems. Okay, so having said that, our observations and framework lead to 4 assumptions. The first one, regional problems in EU border regions as defined in policy objectives and specific objectives by the institutional EU cross-border cooperation programs create bilateral economic, social and business opportunities for social entrepreneurship. The second one, local embeddedness of social entrepreneurship and EU institutional EU cross-border cooperation mutually may reinforce each other, thereby decreasing local and regional daily life problems. The third assumption we had, took, was the exchange of social capital between institutional EU cross-border cooperation and social entrepreneurship, which decreases local and regional daily life problems. And finally, the last assumption, social entrepreneurship can be a form of cross-border cooperation, contributing to local and regional economic and social development through commercial activities. Okay, how did we investigate and test these assumptions? What we did, we took 15 in-depth interviews. We made 2 expert groups. So we interviewed experts and we spread them over 2 groups. The first one, institutional EU cross-border cooperation group. And there we interviewed, for instance, the member of the European Parliament, someone from the DG region in Brussels, an EU specialist of the House of Representatives in The Hague, the Netherlands, someone from the European Network for Rural Development, someone from the Association for European Border Regions, the AEBR, someone from France working at the Mission Opérationnelle Transfrontalière, the MOT, And then also people from regions, from the region Rhine-Waal and from the region Meuse-Rhine. And from the Rhine-Waal, we also interviewed an ambassador for social entrepreneurship in the cross-border region. From the social entrepreneur side, we interviewed the following experts: someone from the Euclid Network. Euclid Network is an overarching interest organization based in the Netherlands, in The Hague, for social entrepreneurship, and also a linking pin, maybe I should say, between the European Commission and social enterprise organizations. We interviewed someone from the Social Enterprise UK, someone from Concert ES, which is a social enterprise interest organization in Wallonia in Belgium. And then we took 3 social enterprises, Umeco, Haus Freudenberg, and the Theodor Brouwer House. The last 2 are German, and Umeco is a Dutch social enterprise. So now, during these interviews, of course, many topics were discussed. And while doing these interviews, we gathered data to test our assumptions. And but I think it's also interesting just to look at a few quotes coming from these interviews, and which, yeah, maybe are a little bit more universal to the problems of social entrepreneurship and EU border regions. For instance, from expert group 1, someone from the region Rhine-Waal said, if you look at the goal of the Interreg program and also the strategic initiatives, they can be very much aligned with what social enterprise work on. So I think one of the goals of Interreg is social cohesion, and that is social enterprise, and that social enterprises are perfect alike, which would be in favor of participation of social enterprises before, for instance, in cross-border cooperation programs. Also, an interesting quote came from the person we interviewed from the DG region in Brussels. The more that you have the trust element, the more that you have the empowerment, the more that you have the embeddedness, the more that you have the social entrepreneurship with the guy on the other side of the border. So this was more pointing towards or indicating how you can reach out across the border as a social entrepreneur. And finally, the person from the MOD made a very interesting short quote that the experts on the ground, that are the local people. So which really points towards the involvement of the local communities. So next to this, we also took some quotes from the social enterprise expert group.
Hans,
yes.
Just to remind you a bit about the time.
Oh, sorry.
I know how many there are.
Okay.
5 minutes or so.
Sorry, I cannot hear you very well, but I understand that I have to take a bit care of the time.
Yes, yes. Otherwise, we cut short the breakout session. Sorry for the interruption, but something like
no problem.
5 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, so expert group 2, I will do it a bit quickly then. The social entrepreneur from Umeco said they want to enter the British market, but there was a problem because they were confronted with local rules and regulation. And he quoted that the great diversity of the European Union is a gift for entrepreneurial opportunities, but also a very challenging one. Well, the Theodor Brouwer House participated in a quite successful project in cross-border cooperation setting. And they said, well, I think we created impact. I just assume so. And of course, this is a long process. It doesn't come overnight. It has to get stuck in the minds of the people of the regions first. And finally, the person from the Social Enterprise UK, who spotted a new trend in local community ownership, and how for example, the Scottish government stimulated this to make communities on, for instance, the islands more self-supportive. And this could be also in a bilateral setting, contributing to social cohesion. What we see between the two, interviewees of the different expert groups, that expert group 1 was quite consistent between all levels, so the higher governance level, but also the local governance level. For expert group 2, this was much less, and especially on the local level, you saw that the interviewees, so the people from the social enterprises, so the opportunities to work across the border or to cooperate, for instance, with Interreg programs. Then I move on a bit different. Okay, this one I will not take too much time then. These are a list of the attributes we listed for drivers, local embeddedness, social and capital and commercial activities. And the red circles indicate the most mentioned attributes by the interviewees. So entrepreneurial opportunities pass by a lot of times, language and mentality with regards to the local embeddedness. Trust was an issue which was very often. And with regards to the commercial activities, knowledge on the other side of the border, so the market knowledge is an important point. Okay, then I will take this slide also a bit briefly and just focus on the column with the complementarity. When you look at the drivers of social entrepreneurship and cross-border cooperation, then you see that social entrepreneurship or enterprises do not always advance cross-border cooperation as an opportunity. With regards to the local embeddedness, there may be a bridging role of social entrepreneurship, bringing cross-border cooperation closer to the citizens in the border regions. With regards to social capital, there is a mitigating, or there could be a mitigating role of social entrepreneurship to improve trust, reciprocity, and interdependency. And finally, for the objectives, commercial activities of social enterprises are a strong proposition with profits that flow back to regional or local impact. So this is how complementarity could be described between social entrepreneurship and cross-border cooperation. Okay, then from the point of view of a social entrepreneur, so how could you reach out across the border and scale impact in border regions? There are three main ways, main approaches. This is expanding your business, replicating your business, or searching for partnerships. And expanding your business can be done by organizational growth, cross-border marketing, diversification, and mergers and acquisitions. Replication could be done by social franchising, copy-paste your business model, for instance, although that's not always so easy. And you could look for partnerships and cooperation, for instance, with the institutions, with other businesses, or with community ownerships. Okay, yes?
We have to come to an end, otherwise we'll...
Yeah, I will come to an end. I will just through the conclusion and recommendations to say that policy alignment between European Commission and social enterprise interest organizations and platforms could be improved. awareness of added value of social entrepreneurship for cross-border cooperation, and the involvement of social enterprises in Interreg A projects, so really local cross-border cooperation projects. Okay, so sorry that I took a bit too much time, but thank you, and maybe there are some questions. And at least I want to wish you good luck with the CERSUI project, but I will also stay at that attend to the webinar for the rest of the webinar. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Hans. Sorry for rushing a bit.
No problem.
I would say if there's a quick question. I can't see the raising hands. Wolfgang Haider, which is it's also representing ZSI from Center for Social Innovation in Vienna, asks you any findings on relevance, impact of Interreg project in facilitating social entrepreneurship, for example, through building up support models.
Yes, there were some interesting findings there. When you, for instance, look at the German-Dutch border, we had the work of the Theodor Brouwerhaus, who we interviewed, and they had a really successful project in integrating the labor markets on both sides of the borders for people who have a difficulty to find proper jobs. Or also refugees. So, but they worked on it and found a way to manage the labor markets, to access the labor markets for Dutch employers on the German side and for German employers on the Dutch side. So this was a quite nice example.
Thank you. Hans will, as he mentioned, also join us in the breakout sessions. Probably there is a possibility to also
yes, of course.
I'm sure the topics overlap. And probably, Hans, you want to put your contact also in the chat so everybody can also contact you directly, because I would now hand over to Benjamin Moore of the GIZ in Skopje. I guess he will introduce himself. He is representing also the ZETRA project here, and we are really happy to have him on board. The stage is yours.
Good. Thank you very much, Moritz. And it's a pleasure for me having been invited today to today's webinar session. I hope you see the presentation. If you could give me a short feedback on this. And I was more than
not in complete mode, just in the.
Okay, then I have to adjust this. Sorry for this.
No worries.
I will adjust this now. It's always a bit of issue with two screens. Is it better now, Moritz?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So it was also a great pleasure for me to look through the participants and to see so many names and so many persons being interested in the topic of cross-border cooperation, social innovation, and yeah, to see so many initiatives. I would like to take you to a little journey, let's say, on the doorsteps of Europe to the Western Balkans, where we are working together with 6 countries in total: North Macedonia, Kosovo, Albania, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Serbia, and Montenegro. And all these countries have in common that they aim to join the European Union, and therefore a lot of work takes already place today to prepare the structures, processes, so that one day the region or the countries will join the Union. They are already, let's say, moderately prepared to deal with all the complexity, but also all the beauty the European Union offers. I'm in charge of the so-called CETA project, Support to Economic Diversification of Rural Cross-Border Areas in Southeast Europe, which is jointly implemented with the Standing Working Group for Regional Rural Development, which is a platform of the Ministries of Agriculture in the region. Very briefly, what we are doing, we are focusing on rural areas, and in rural areas, we are focusing in particular on cross-border areas. We build capacities for rural development policies. We facilitate community-led local development. And as a proof of the concept, so if we are getting the policy right and we are creating a local enabling environment, we are somehow also supporting value chains in selected 7 cross-border regions, stretching across all 6 countries of the Western Balkans. Our major field of activities is regional cooperation and policy advice. So this is more on a macro level, combining all the 6 countries to somehow jointly discuss and develop policies in light of the EU accession, and strengthening the respective coordination structures, which are, let's say, they're above the national level. Then we are looking in business models in these regions, and region by region we have identified subsectors with a high development potential in this particular cross-border region, and there we are working with a so-called value chain approach, meaning somehow grouping and working together with all actors along the value chain of a specific subsector, and trying to overcome the bottlenecks or to jointly improve the value added locally. And we are providing targeted investment support to relevant key stakeholders to facilitate, to help the chain to take off. And last but not least, we are focusing on community-led and area-based development with following the leader approach. And there I will come later back to it. There is kind of a special leader or a leader approach, which is a bit advanced in the Western Balkans, which is called the area-based development approach, which is focusing on cross-border regions and combining in a local action group members of all countries involved. These are mostly 3. Good. Very briefly about the general setup. For sure, we are contributing to the EU session, mostly focusing on Chapter 11, Agriculture and Rural Development, partly on Chapter 12, Food Safety, Veterinary Issues, and Chapter 27, Environment and Cost-Cutting Issues. If we would be precise here, and given the fact that you're all coming from a cohesion policy background, one could also add the Chapter 22, which is regional development, and there we have somehow a kind of an overlap between the agricultural issues with the leader approach and everything which is found in the 2nd pillar of the Common Agricultural Policy. And for sure, we also are aligned with regional strategies of the Western Balkans. There, the logic is that somehow a regional integration, so meaning a better cooperation of the countries within the Western Balkan regions, is the vehicle which finally will lead to an EU accession. So regional integrations towards the European integration would there be the topic to mention. And last but not least, sure, we are aligned with the overarching architecture of development cooperation, the 2030 agenda, and sustainable development goals, in particular, no poverty, zero hunger, decent work and economic growth, life on land, so meaning the environmental topics, and peace and justice and strong institutions with a particular focus on local governance. Good. Here now a map. It's always a bit critical in the Western Balkans to show a map because the borders are partly disputed. But this also highlights why it is so important to work across the borders in multi-ethnic peripheral areas. So we are covering all 6 countries and working already since 6 years now in Trina Sava, Trina Tava, Shara, and Prespa, which are the border regions between Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Montenegro, Albania, Macedonia, and to a certain extent Greece. And since 3 years, we have 3 more regions, which is Križ, Croatia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Montenegro, Prokleti, Montenegro, and Kosovo, Albania, And last but not least, Pšinja Krajšte, which is the border region between Serbia, North Macedonia, and Bulgaria. The main message is we are doing this together with our partner, the SWG. We are strengthening the regional cooperation among the Western Balkan countries, and we contribute to income, employment, and growth locally. The most important is to provide prospects for the rural population so that they see a future for themselves where they are living. I talked already shortly about the regional cooperation and policy advice. I make it very short here. We focus on selective instruments of the common agricultural policy. We are setting up regional expert groups consisting of experts from all the countries. We are backing this process with international expertise to somehow get the European benchmarks right. And together we are in a process, we are assessing the status quo where the countries are standing. And then based on the status quo and the European benchmarks, we are providing recommendations country by country and for the region about the most important reform priorities. Currently, we are touching on three topics. One is EU quality policy. The other one is economic diversification through rural tourism. And the last one is the practical application of the leader pre-accession assistance. In the field of sustainable business models, there we are back to the rural cross-border regions. We have identified in total 4 value chains covering the 7 regions: mountain tourism. You see there some pictures, honey and beekeeping, traditional specialties, and rural tourism. There we are focusing a classical value chain approach. And I think interesting is one element that we are really with our work focusing to support our partners to have access to existing financing instruments, especially the pre-accession assistance and the cross-border cooperation program, which is similar to Interreg, let's say on a little bit lower level. And we have a very beautiful instrument, which we call people-to-people, where we actually do nothing than supporting initiatives in cross-border regions, which have a regional character, and we are just somehow there supporting all kind of cultural or economic or environmental activities of local stakeholders financially. So this is a quite nice and rewarding instrument. And last but not least, in the third component, we support the leader approach as such, and in particular, the leader approach in border regions. And I mentioned earlier that we started with the so-called area-based development approach, a cross-border LAC, a cross-border leader region. Unfortunately, there the EU has stopped financing this approach. So we somehow took it over and are currently transferring these cross-border LACs into national LACs and supporting them to work across borders. And that's there also where somehow when we talk about social innovation in rural areas, that's already a social innovation as such, that somehow stakeholders across the borders of different countries and different institutions somehow are coming together in one structure, LAC-like structure, defining their development objectives. And based on these local development strategies, cross-border strategies, we then either go in directly to finance selected issues in light of this value chain promotion, or we somehow support our partners locally to get proposals ready to in an appropriate quality for the EU cross-border cooperation or the EPAD program. On this micro level, we pay particular attention to the rights of women and young people. And I think it was the Kosovarian Minister of Agriculture who said once the rural women are leaving the rural areas, then they're completely lost. So for sure, we have, especially in the Western Balkans, a very high mobility of young men who somehow are working abroad, sending money home. But as soon somehow really the youngsters and also the rural women are leaving the regions, then you see really border regions which are completely empty, and that's what somehow drives us to stay engaged in order to provide prospects for the rural population in the Western Balkans. here in this component, we call it, we work very closely together with the rural development networks of the Western Balkan countries and the umbrella network, the so-called Balkan Rural Development Network. And we have been doing jointly training needs assessments for the local level actors and developed guidelines for trainers and a series of training of trainers to somehow build up the capacities for the day when somehow the leader approach is up and running in all 6 Western Balkan countries. Currently, we are standing pretty well in 3 of the 6 countries, and we hope that we also get the latecomers, I would say so, Kosovo, Bosnia, Herzegovina, with more structural issues on the governmental side, also on board to somehow provide services to rural areas. I think that's it in brief. Just looking at the time, I hope, Moritz, I've managed in time, and I stand ready to, for question and answers. And I hope I was able to provide you with interesting insights in a nutshell and rather rushing through quite quickly. Thanks a lot for your attention and a very nice day to come.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. Are there any questions from the audience? Do I see?
If I may?
Yes, Davide from Demo Center in Modena, Italy.
Just to know if, of course, there will be probably some KPI that assess the impact of all these measures in terms of generated new opportunities or enterprises or something else, just to understand the effective application of all the tools.
Okay, sure. We have KPIs on the 3 different levels of the outcomes. When it comes to the regional cooperation and policy advice, it is somehow measuring to what extent the policy advice has been taken up by regional organizations, meaning the bodies in charge for the regional cooperation on the one side, and on the other side, to what extent these recommendations are finding their way into the national level programming. So there, on the level of regional cooperation and policy advice, we measure somehow what is done within the policy framework in the region, in the country. When it comes to sustainable business models in the cross-border regions, there we are somehow bound to more hard indicators, counting heads and investments. So there we are down to employment figures and amount of investments and the share of investments by the stakeholders from the rural regions, where we are targeting a share of 40%. And when it comes to community-led and area-based development, so the preparation for the leader approach, there we are having a combination of indicator. One is satisfaction based on the trainings and capacity development measures we provide. And the other one is measuring the level of participation of women and youth in decision-making bodies on the local level. I hope that answered your question, David.
If I don't see any raised hand, I would have a question. I would have a question regarding social innovation. I mean, with the CEDRA project, you do quite like this geographically, but also approach-wise. So you work with local people, but also for sure do like policy consulting. I'm not sure what the right term is. What in all the discourses and in your work, does social innovations play a role, the discourse, or do you refer to that, or will you? Yeah.
It's a very valid question, and somehow social innovation as such plays a crucial role in the current phase of the project, which comes to an end this summer. It is not yet embedded in the project narrative as such. In the next phase, we will put a focus on social innovation in rural areas with the aspect of inclusion of people with disabilities in the labor market. And there somehow the vehicle would be the tourism sector and tourism service provision, where we somehow think that we could provide opportunities for people with disabilities. If you think about the term social innovation in a bit broader sense, I think you all know about the setup in the Western Balkan countries, this very high diversity when it comes to cultures, landscapes, people. That's already a social innovation as such, that somehow people of 5, 6 different ethnic groups or nationalities are coming together and working together in a country which somehow has seen the last wars to stop not even 20 years ago. To continue here, we were for sure challenged by the current pandemic situation about how we can somehow still continue with service delivery. And there we were really thrilled about the question how we can somehow find alternative ways of service delivery in order not to lose the most marginalized stakeholders in this situation. And when it comes to the burning issues of social innovation in rural areas, I would say it's mostly related to the migration and the resulting demographic changes. So we see villages where only the elderly people remain, and they're completely cut off from any transport or social service infrastructure. And it's simply not enough that the youngsters are coming once a year in the summer for 6 weeks for holidays. But these elderly are simply left where they are, and there's a massive need. We are not yet 100% there. Also, unfortunately, no real instruments, nor a complete awareness about on the side of the partners. But there is a massive need for social innovation in rural areas. And I think there we are just at the very beginning of a journey to somehow bring this topic and communicate this topic in the region of the Western Balkans.
Thank you, Benjamin, again. I guess also for you, there is plenty of occasion to talk about topics that are related, or you mentioned in the breakout session. You mentioned you stay until 5, so that's I was wrong before. So you will be able to stay. That's good. Now, and I would ask you to mute yourself briefly. And then thank you. And now that we have the analytical lens, now we took a look at our partner regions in Southeast Europe. I would go to our Central European region and present the case of the flagship product and fruit road project from the Slovenian-Austrian border region. And as I mentioned, Janja is not here today, but we recorded a video. So let's go. Here it is. I tested it. Sometimes it's a bit loud, so tune down probably, so then you can tune up the loudspeaker. I don't know. That would be a recommendation from my side. Can you see it?
I'm Janja Vichar. I'm from Maribor. I work now on Prisma Foundation, and also I have my own institution, which is working on project flagship products. The main objective of this Interreg Slovenia-Austria flagship product project is through the future-oriented partnership of economy, gastronomy, services, farmers, and regions to develop and work on new perspectives for employment and creation of added value of flagship products oriented in new tourism, gastronomy, and all other services with absolutely new job opportunities for young people and women in all this region on the Slovenia-Austria border. There is a border with two different cultures, but we learn from each other a lot, especially in the tourism sector and in, I think, this farmer's perspective in new era of all this weather solution. If we go into the light of the economy, we strive to the same goals on the new products and prosperity of both nations, especially in the time of this crisis, COVID. We wish to develop new tourism offer and combine with leading products in this our region, not just wine, also other things, and to create customer experience more I think, more pleasures, with creating also new jobs for young people. We have a lot of young people on our farm, and we wish to stay there in this area and working in tourism and the other sectors, and that they can have new skills for transferring knowledge from older to young people, and also preserving the tradition of the two regions, which is common in the same goal, so in tourism sector. We have hiking, we have Nordic walking, we have e-bikes a lot in this region, because we are we are doors in the Alps, so we are Pannonian, and also we have a lot of small hills all around Slovenia side and also on the Austria side. So we are working on personal tourism services for health, well-being, soundness, and we need for these all products also best practices in healthy food. We wish to organize of primary and complementary offering gastronomy, not just organize and management of events or linking with the local supply chain, but we wish to work on new value-added products. So we don't need to sell apple, like apple. We wish to work on new products which combine also apple chucks, cake, jams, liquors, and everything else what our tourism and also local people needed, and we have in this region, and they didn't know. I think that everything now in, I think maybe 1 or 2 years, it's a little more different, like it was 10 years ago. We have the same area and the same tourist guests, and probably we are striving to the same goals. So we have the same goals of new products and also new prosperity of both nations, especially in this, I think, COVID times, because we need to do something more pleasure to our guests and also for the local people, because there was also a lot of migration. Our employments working in Austria and etc. And I think that we must work together, and farmers and all services needed this cooperation, and they are working now on a lot of projects, this cross-border project, and we are speak 2 languages, but in project we are all speak the same language. This is economy language. Labor is in this area is, yes, it's a lot of this cross-border migration every day. So we have challenges now in the COVID situation because our people can work in Austria, and now this in this season, I think that it will be everything better. I think that farmer sector is on the best side because they need this cooperation, and on the side of I think this government side and municipality side, I think that we need a lot more time. So we need some project that we can trust each other, and I think that this is in this time. I think that must be not today, or it will be, but it must be today. Barriers are in the different development strategies of Slovenia and Austria, and also organization on the regional and the level of development of new services is more different in both of countries. But we are working on that, and our work is always in progress to be better, to be more prospective, and that this cross-border will have the best solution for, I think, local people, services, farmers, government level, and municipality level. So we are working on this, I think, some mix of everything, and this is not just apple and fruit root, but it's also the root with some more specific meaning on the social economy and everything else. Yeah, I think that it's the most important that we trust each other, that we working on one project with one same goal, and that we must combine e-communication, quality standards, new brands, development of villages on the each side of countries, and that we also have a new opportunity for new challenges for all our producers. So with new products, are we connected with also destination management, and we are working on the same marketing. And this must be also horizontal and also vertical connecting in all cross-border area, not just in Slovenia or not just in Austria, but we must work together hand in hand. I think that main option is that we must trust each other.